The stars were dying. The Galactic Harmony Council had run out of hope. Ambassador Zilith stood before the great crystal display in the council chamber, watching red markers spread across the galaxy map like a disease. Each red dot meant another world consumed, another billion souls devoured by the Vorthok swarm. The insectoid creatures had been unstoppable for 3 years now, eating their way through peaceful civilizations that had never known war. More systems lost this cycle, reported Counselor Vex, her blue crystalline form dim with sorrow. The meadow worlds of Serenity 7, gone. Not even time to evacuate. Zilith's tentacles curled in despair. The Harmony Council had tried everything their peaceful minds could imagine. They offered the Vorthok food territory, even entire uninhabited star systems. The swarm just consumed the offerings and kept coming. Diplomacy meant nothing to creatures that saw other species as food. Perhaps we should consider the Outer Rim proposal again, suggested Counselor Nim, his flower-like head drooping. Full retreat to the galaxy's edge. Abandon the core worlds. And let 30 trillion beings die? Zilith's voice carried a tremor. Of anger and emotion rarely felt by his species. There must be another way. The council chamber fell silent. These were beings who had evolved beyond violence, creatures whose worlds had been gardens of peace for millions of years. War was a concept they understood only from ancient history files. They had no weapons, no warriors, no knowledge of how to fight back against the darkness consuming their galaxy. The deep space monitors picked up something interesting, announced. Technician Quill, scuttling into the chamber on 6 legs. Strange transmissions from an uncharted system. Sector 7 Delta. Zilith turned from the map. What kind of transmissions? Audio and visual signals? It's very primitive, but the content is ... unusual. Quill activated a small projector. Fuzzy images appeared in the air, showing bipedal creatures with only 4 limbs and forward-facing eyes. Like predators. The first transmission crackled to life. A scarred creature spoke in harsh tones. We leave no one behind, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. We bring our people home. More images followed. The bipedal beings helped each other from burning vehicles. They carried wounded companions. Across dangerous ground, they stood together against impossible odds, refusing to run even when defeat seemed certain. They call themselves humans, Quill explained. Their world designation is Earth, located in what they call the Sol System. But Ambassador Zilith, the most interesting part is this. He played another recording. A female human with kind eyes spoke softly. In our darkest hour, when all hope seems lost, we must remember that compassion is not weakness. It is the strength to care for others when caring hurts. It is the choice to help strangers because it is right, not because it is easy. Zilith felt something stir in his chest. Hope. These humans spoke of compassion in helping others. They seemed to understand the value of all life. There's more, Quill continued. They have a concept they call humanitarian aid. They send help to other humans who suffer, even when it brings them no benefit. They risk their lives to save strangers. The council members looked at each other with growing excitement. Here was a species that might understand their plight, beings who valued compassion and helping others. Perhaps these humans would share their resources, offer shelter to refugees, or provide some other form of aid. But Ambassador Quill's voice carried a note of confusion. There's something strange about their world. The radiation levels, the gravity, the atmospheric pressure, the weather patterns. According to our analysis, their planet should be uninhabitable. The life forms there are impossibly aggressive and dangerous. Zilith dismissed this with a wave of his tentacles. Many worlds seem harsh to outsiders. What matters is that these humans understand compassion. They help others in need. Counselor Vex stepped forward. Should we attempt contact? Yes, Zilith decided. Prepare the fastest ship. I will go to this Earth myself and request their aid. If they truly believe in helping others, perhaps they will take pity on our situation. Within hours, Zilith was aboard the courier ship Peaceful Dawn, racing toward the Sol System. The journey would take several days, even with the fastest engines in the fleet. As the ship jumped through hyperspace, Zilith reviewed the human transmissions again and again. He found their words inspiring. They spoke of courage, of standing together, of never abandoning those in need. Surely such compassionate beings would understand the Harmony Council's desperate situation. Perhaps they could offer shelter to refugees, or share their agricultural knowledge, or provide medical supplies. The more Zilith watched, the more convinced he became that these humans were exactly what the galaxy needed. Their messages spoke of hope, of never giving up, of fighting for what was right. Surely fighting for what was right meant peaceful resistance. Like the protest movements his own species had used in ancient times, as the peaceful dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Zilith felt optimistic for the first time in months. The Vorthok swarm might be unstoppable, but perhaps these compassionate humans could help save at least some of the galaxy's innocence. He had no way of knowing that every transmission he had heard was created by the same species that had survived. Ice ages, plagues, predators, and wars that had raged for centuries. The same species that had turned their deadly world into a garden through 10,000 years of constant struggle. Zilith was about to learn that when humans spoke of fighting for what was right, they meant something very different from peaceful protest. The peaceful dawn shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Zilith gripped his chair with 3 tentacles, while the 4th operated the communication panel. The planet below looked impossibly blue and green, covered in what his sensors called weather systems that moved with violent energy. Unknown vessel, this is North American Aerospace Defense Command. A human voice crackled through the speakers. You are in restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately, or we will take defensive action. Defensive action? Zilith felt confused. Why would anyone need defense against a single unarmed courier ship? He activated the universal translator and responded carefully. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Zilith of the Galactic Harmony Council. I come seeking your compassionate aid in a time of great need. A long pause followed. Then the voice returned, now joined by others speaking. Rapidly in the background, Zilith heard words like contact protocol, threat assessment, and scramble fighters. Ambassador Zilith, maintain current heading and altitude. You will be escorted to Andrews Air Force Base for diplomatic processing. Within minutes, 6 angular flying machines flanked the peaceful dawn. Zilith's sensors detected weapon systems that made his skin turn pale blue with fear. These escort craft carried enough firepower to level a small city. What kind of compassionate beings flew around in such destructive vehicles? The landing at the human facility confused Zilith even more. Armed soldiers surrounded his ship before he could even open the hatch. They moved with practiced precision, covering every angle, ready for violence at any moment. Their faces were hidden behind protective masks, and they carried weapons designed to kill other beings. A female human stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal short brown hair and calculating eyes. Ambassador Zilith, I'm Colonel Sarah Martinez, Liaison Officer for First Contact Protocol. Welcome to Earth. Zilith descended from his ship on shaking tentacles. The gravity was crushing, the air thick and heavy. How did these humans survive in such hostile conditions? Thank you for receiving me, Colonel Martinez. I bring urgent news of galactic importance. We're aware of your situation, she replied. Surprising him, our deep space arrays picked up fragments of your transmissions about this Vorthok swarm 3 hours ago. We've already begun preliminary analysis. They walked toward a massive concrete building while soldiers marched in formation. Around them, Zilith noticed that every human he saw carried weapons or wore armor or both. Even the ones who appeared to be civilians had hard expressions and moved like predators. Inside the building, Zilith found himself in a room filled with displays showing star charts, tactical readouts, and what appeared to be military intelligence reports. Human officers studied the data with intense focus, while others barked orders into communication devices. General Morrison will brief you on our preliminary assessment, Colonel Martinez said, leading him to a scarred human with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Ambassador, General Morrison's voice carried authority that made Zilith's tentacles curl reflexively. We've run combat simulations based on your transmitted data about the Vorthok swarm. Nasty pieces of work. Typical hive mind expansion pattern. No negotiation potential. Total war doctrine. Scorched earth tactics. Blinked rapidly. Combat simulations? General Morrison, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I came here seeking humanitarian aid. Perhaps shelter for refugees, or food supplies, or medical assistance. The room fell silent. Every human turned to stare at him with expressions he could not read. General Morrison's scarred face showed something that might have been amusement. You came to the wrong species for running away, the general said slowly. When humanity hears about genocide, we don't offer bandages, we offer solutions. But your transmissions spoke of compassion, of helping others, Zilith protested weakly. Exactly, Colonel Martinez stepped forward. And the most compassionate thing we can do is stop these Vorthok before they kill another innocent being. A younger human officer approached with a tablet. Sir, initial fleet composition recommendations are ready for your review. The Joint Chiefs want to know if we're looking at a police action or full strategic deployment. General Morrison studied the tablet. Given the enemy's expansion rate and total war posture, I'm recommending we treat this as a clear and present danger scenario. Full military response. Zilith felt his world spinning. These humans were not the gentle pacifists he had expected. They spoke of war as casually as his people discussed gardening. Worse, they seemed excited by the prospect of fighting the Vorthok swarm. Perhaps I should explain, Zilith said desperately. The Vorthok are incredibly dangerous. They have consumed 17 star systems. They show no mercy, take no prisoners, and cannot be reasoned with. Fighting them would be suicide. Every human in the room looked at him with the same expression. It was not fear. It was not concern. It was something far more terrifying. It was anticipation. Ambassador, General Morrison said quietly, you just described every enemy humanity has ever faced. Overwhelming numbers, superior firepower, no mercy, no negotiation. You know what happened to all of them? Zilith shook his head numbly. They learned why Earth is called a death world. The general smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. Not because it's hard to live here, but because everything that lives here knows how to kill. As alarms began sounding throughout the facility, and humans rushed to battle stations with practiced efficiency, Zilith realized his terrible mistake. He had not found compassionate gardeners who would shelter refugees. He had found apex predators who viewed the Vorthok swarm as just another problem to solve with violence. The next 72 hours passed like a nightmare for Ambassador Zilith. He watched in growing terror as humanity mobilized for war with frightening efficiency. In the Pentagon's Situation Room, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a massive holographic display showing Earth's orbital shipyards. Hundreds of vessels that had been building civilian space stations were being converted into warships. Factory ships that made mining equipment now produced missiles and armor plating. Construction timeline? Admiral Chen asked the engineering officer. 18 days for full fleet conversion, ma'am. We're pulling every available ship from cargo duty, exploration missions, and colony support. Total force projection, 237 vessels. Zilith's tentacles trembled. His people took years to build a single ship. These humans were creating a war fleet in less than 3 weeks. What about ground forces? General Morrison asked from across the table. Every nation is contributing, replied a woman with multiple stars on her uniform. The Chinese are sending their 2nd Armored Division. Russians are deploying their Special Forces Arctic Battalion. The Americans, British, French, and Germans are coordinating joint operations. Even the Swiss are offering combat engineers. Chen turned to Zilith. Ambassador, we need detailed intelligence on Vorthok ground capabilities. How do they fight on planets? Zilith struggled to speak. Admiral Chen, surely you cannot be serious about this. The Vorthok swarm has destroyed civilizations that were thousands of years older than humanity. They are unstoppable. That's not what I asked, she replied coldly. How do they fight? Through his fear, Zilith found himself answering. They drop. From space in metal pods, millions of them. They swarm across the surface, consuming everything. Their individual soldiers are 2 meters tall, armored like tanks, with mandibles that can cut through steel. A young human officer looked up from his tablet. "Ma'am, that matches the profile for the enhanced infantry armor we've been developing. The Mark 7 suits should provide adequate protection." Admiral Chen nodded. "What about their space tactics?" "They travel in huge fleets," Zilith said weakly. "Thousands of ships moving together like a single organism. They overwhelm defenders." "With pure numbers, classic swarm doctrine," General Morrison observed. "We've dealt with that before. At Midway, the Somme, Stalingrad. Numbers only matter if you can't break their coordination." Zilith stared at the human military leaders in disbelief. They spoke of facing impossible odds as if it were a normal. Tuesday, they discussed fighting an unstoppable alien swarm, the same way as people might discuss planting gardens. "Admiral," another officer announced, "President Williams wants to address the fleet before departure." The wall screen activated to show a gray-haired human in a simple dark suit standing behind a wooden podium. Behind him hung a flag with red, white, and blue colors. "My fellow humans," President Williams began, "today we face a choice that will define our species. An alien ambassador has come to us with news of genocide occurring across the galaxy. Billions of innocent beings are being slaughtered by creatures that know no mercy." Zilith watched human faces around the room grow hard with determination. "Some might ask why we should risk our lives for strangers we have never met, on worlds we cannot pronounce, for people who look nothing like us. The answer is simple. It's because it is right. Because when evil spreads across the stars, good people must stand up and fight it." The president's voice grew stronger. "Our ancestors faced impossible odds before. They stood at Thermopylae against Persian hordes. They stormed the beaches at Normandy against fascist armies. They walked through fire at Gettysburg to preserve freedom. Today, we carry that torch into space." Admiral Chen stood straighter. Around the room, other officers did the same. "We go not as conquerors, but as defenders. We fight not for territory or resources, but for the simple idea that evil should not triumph while good people can still raise their hands in defiance. To the Vorthok swarm we say this: you picked the wrong galaxy to terrorize." When the transmission ended, the room buzzed with activity. Officers contacted their units. Technical staff coordinated supply lines. Communication specialists established contact with human military bases around the world. Zilith watched a sergeant brief a squad of soldiers on Vorthok anatomy, showing them where to aim their weapons for maximum effect. He saw engineers modifying human weapons to work in the vacuum of space. He observed medical personnel studying alien biology to better treat wounded allies. Ambassador Admiral Chen approached him with a data tablet. "We need you to contact the Galactic Harmony Council. Tell them the human fleet will arrive at the front lines in 26 days. "Admiral Chen," Zilith whispered, "you do not understand what you are walking into. The Vorthok have never been defeated, ever. They have consumed entire star systems. What makes you think a few hundred human ships can succeed where thousands of others have failed?" Admiral Chen's smile was not reassuring. "Ambassador, you're thinking like prey. No. The Vorthok have never fought anyone who considered genocide a personal insult. They've never faced a species that gets more dangerous when the odds are impossible." She gestured to the massive display, showing Earth's fleet preparing for war. Weapons being loaded, armor being welded, soldiers training for combat in zero gravity. Every human who volunteers for this mission knows they might not come home. They're going anyway. Do you know why? Zilith shook his head. Because someone has to. Because it's right. Because that's what humans do when innocent people need protecting. As the human expeditionary force prepared to launch, Zilith finally understood what he had unleashed upon the galaxy. He had not found compassionate pacifists. He had found something far more terrifying: compassionate warriors. The Vorthok hive mind had consumed 43 star systems without a single defeat. As their massive swarm descended on Kepler 442b, the last refuge of 3 dying species, they expected another easy victory. They were wrong. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching her fleet drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. 237 human warships faced a Vorthok armada of over 3,000 vessels. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson. "Enemy fleet composition confirmed." "Roughly 15-to-1 odds against us." "Acceptable," Admiral Chen replied calmly. Around the bridge, her crew smiled. They had trained for worse odds than this. On the planet below, the last survivors of the Harmony species huddled in underground bunkers, while Vorthok warriors swarmed across the surface. Ambassador Zelith's cousin, Healer Vex, tended to wounded. "Refugees in the deepest shelter. It's hopeless," whispered a young Harmony child, her purple scales dim with fear. "The monsters will find us soon." Before Healer Vex could answer, her communication device crackled to life. A human voice spoke through the translator, calm and professional. "Kepler 4 for to be survivors. This is Admiral Chen of the Human Expeditionary Force. We have arrived. Please remain in your shelters while we clear the surface." Through the bunker's periscope, Healer Vex watched human ships descend through the atmosphere like falling stars. They moved in tight formations, covering each other with precise coordination. The Vorthok ships rushed to intercept them, confident. In their overwhelming numbers, the first engagement lasted exactly 12 minutes. Human ships, like nothing the Vorthok had ever encountered. Instead of fleeing when outnumbered, they formed defensive circles and concentrated their fire. When Vorthok vessels tried to ram them, the humans scattered and reformed like a school of fish, avoiding a predator. "Enemy command ship targeted," reported the weapons officer aboard the Defiance. "Firing solution locked." "Take the shot," Admiral Chen ordered. A single human torpedo, smaller than a Vorthok escape pod, punched through the massive command vessel's armor and detonated inside its brain core. The explosion crippled the local hive coordination. It's causing dozens of Vorthok ships to collide with each other in confusion. On the planet's surface, Vorthok ground forces experienced something they had never felt before: uncertainty. Their mental link to the fleet was damaged, leaving individual warriors to think for themselves. They had never learned how to do that. Human dropships descended like angry wasps, deploying soldiers in powered armor that gleamed silver against the alien landscape. The first Vorthok warriors charged them with typical swarm tactics, expecting to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers. Instead, they met Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez and her squad from the 2nd Marine Division. "Contact front," Rodriguez shouted into her helmet communicator. Her rifle fired controlled bursts that dropped 3 Vorthok warriors before they could close the distance. Around her, her Marines moved with practiced precision, each covering the other's movements. The Vorthok had faced many species in their expansion across the galaxy. They had fought creatures with superior technology, beings with psychic powers, and races with natural armor thicker than steel. But they had never fought anything that refused to break under pressure. When the first human defensive line was overrun by sheer numbers, the Vorthok expected the survivors to flee. Instead, the humans regrouped 50 meters back and kept firing. When that position fell, they moved again and again. Each time, they made the Vorthok pay for every meter of ground. Transmitted a confused Vorthok unit leader to its dying command structure. The answer came from an unexpected source. A human soldier, wounded and surrounded, spoke into his communicator as Vorthok warriors closed in around him. "Tell my family I love them. Tell them we held the line." Then he detonated his suit's power core. Taking 17 Vorthok with him, the battle in space was going equally badly for the swarm. Human ships used tactics that the Vorthok's collective mind could not understand. They sacrificed individual vessels to save others. They took impossible risks to rescue damaged allies. They fought as if each ship contained their own children. "Admiral," Commander Jackson reported, "the Kiev and the Mumbai are heavily damaged. They're requesting permission to ram the enemy dreadnought." Admiral Chen watched the tactical display. The 2 crippled human ships were moving toward a Vorthok vessel 10 times their size. Their crews knew it was suicide. They were volunteering. "Anyway, permission granted," she said quietly. "Godspeed, Kiev. Godspeed, Mumbai." The 2 ships accelerated toward the massive Vorthok dreadnought. their crews singing an old human song about amazing grace. When they struck, the explosion could be seen from orbit for the first time in their species' history. The Vorthok swarm experienced something they had no name for: fear. Individual warriors began retreating without orders. Ship captains broke formation and fled toward hyperspace. The collective mind that had conquered 43 star systems was fracturing under pressure from a single human fleet. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving surrender requests from multiple Vorthok vessels."
"Admiral?"
Chen studied the tactical display. Half the enemy fleet was destroyed or fleeing. The other half was requesting terms of surrender. On the planet below, Vorthok ground forces were abandoning their positions and running for their dropships. "Tell them we accept their surrender," she said. "Make it clear. Any vessel that threatens civilian populations again will be destroyed." Without warning, in the underground bunker, Healer Vex watched through the periscope as human soldiers helped wounded Vorthok warriors. The same beings who had been killing the aliens minutes before were now giving them medical treatment. "I don't understand," whispered the young Harmony child. "Why are they helping the monsters who hurt us?" Healer Vex thought of Ambassador Zilith's reports about human compassion and finally understood. "Because," she said softly, "they are not monsters. They are something the galaxy has never seen before. They are warriors who fight not because they love war, but because they love peace." 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 44, to be. Ambassador Zilith stood in the same council chamber where his desperate journey had begun. The crystal display now showed a very different galaxy. The red markers that had spread like infection across it. The star map were gone. In their place, blue dots marked worlds where human peacekeeping forces maintained order. Green symbols showed refugee camps where survivors of the Vorthok expansion received aid and medical care. Yellow indicators marked former Vorthok territory now under galactic protection. "The final Vorthok stronghold has surrendered," reported Counselor Vex, her crystalline form bright with amazement. "The swarm that terrorized the galaxy for 3 years has been contained to their home system under human supervision." Tentacles curled with emotions he still struggled to understand. Relief, certainly. Gratitude, without question. But also something else. Something that felt almost like fear. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had stopped the Vorthok swarm. But in doing so, they had changed everything. "The human fleet is requesting permission to return to Earth," Counselor Nim announced. "Admiral Chen says their mission is complete." Through the chamber's viewing portal, Zilith could see human warships in orbit above the Harmony homeworld. The same vessels that had brought terror to the Vorthok now served as protectors for billions of grateful civilians. Human soldiers walked the streets below, helping with reconstruction efforts and teaching basic defense tactics to species that had never known war. A communication screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen's face. Behind her, the bridge of the UES Defiance bustled with activity as her crew prepared for the long journey home. "Council members," Admiral Chen said formally, "the human expeditionary force has completed its mission. The Vorthok threat has been neutralized. All civilian populations in the affected sectors are secure." Admiral Chen Zilith spoke carefully. "The Galactic Harmony Council wishes to express its deepest gratitude. You have saved countless lives. Surely there must be some way we can repay this debt." Admiral Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Is one thing, Ambassador." Council members leaned forward eagerly. "Surely these powerful humans would want territory or resources or technological secrets." "We want your promise," Admiral Chen said quietly. "Your promise that this will never happen again. That when the next threat comes, when the next species tries to commit genocide, you won't stand by and hope someone else will solve the problem." The council chamber fell silent. This was not what they had expected. Admiral Counselor Vex said hesitantly, "We are not warriors. We do not know how to fight." "You don't need to be warriors," Admiral Chen replied. "But you need to be willing to stand up for what's right. When evil spreads, good people must act. Even if action is difficult, even if it's dangerous." Zilith felt understanding dawn slowly in his mind. "You're asking us to become like you." "No." Admiral Chen shook her head. "We're asking you to become yourselves, but better." Called us here because you cared enough about innocent lives to risk everything on a desperate chance. That's exactly the spirit the galaxy needs. On the screen behind her, human ships began forming up for departure. Sleek warships that had struck fear into the hearts of the Vorthok swarm now looked almost protective as they prepared to leave. Admiral Zillith said suddenly, "What if we fail? What if another threat arises and we cannot stop it?" Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Zillith found the expression comforting rather than terrifying. "Then you call us," she said simply. "Earth will remember its friends. We'll come running." The communication ended, leaving the council in contemplative silence. Through the viewing portal, they watched the human fleet disappear into hyperspace, blue engine trails fading like shooting stars. "They're really leaving, Counselor," Nim said in wonder. "They could have demanded anything, tribute territory, submission. Instead, they're just going home." Zillith moved to the star map, studying the peaceful blue and green markers that had replaced the spreading red infection of the Vorthok swarm. In human-protected space, former enemies worked together. On reconstruction projects, Vorthok prisoners received medical care alongside their former victims. Species that had been bitter rivals now cooperated under human guidance. "Perhaps that's the most terrifying thing about them," Zillith said softly. "They fight like demons, but they don't conquer. They destroy evil, but they don't become evil. They save the galaxy, and then they leave, asking only that we try to be better." 3 weeks later, the first Galactic Defense Treaty was signed by 12 species. It established joint patrol fleets, rapid response protocols, and mutual aid agreements. For the first time in galactic history, peaceful civilizations organized themselves not just for trade and diplomacy, but for protection. The treaty's preamble began with words that would become famous across the galaxy. "When evil rises, good people must stand together. We pledge to defend not just our own worlds, but all innocent life, because it is right. And because we have learned that sometimes the greatest act of compassion is the willingness to fight." Far away on Earth, Admiral Chen read the treaties, text with satisfaction. Around her, human children played in parks while their parents worked in laboratories and factories building a better future. The blue and green world that had produced humanity spun peacefully in space. No longer alone in the galaxy, humanity had sought nothing from the stars except the knowledge that evil would not triumph, while good people could still stand against it. They had found something better than conquest or wealth. They had found purpose, and across the galaxy. When children asked their parents why the monsters no longer came in the night, the answer was always the same: because the humans taught us to be brave.